Hello, this is episode 206, and today we're continuing in our series of Matthew. We're at Matthew chapter 27. We're going to pick up again verse 50 through to 54, and we're looking at the second part of the issue in Matthew's Gospel of the death of Jesus, at that point of death. So in verse 50 of chapter 27, "Then Jesus cried again with a loud voice and breathed his last. At that moment the curtain of the temple was torn in two, from top to bottom. The earth shook and the rocks were split. The tombs also were opened, and many bodies of the saints who had fallen asleep were raised. After his resurrection they came out of the tombs and entered the holy city and appeared to many." Now, when the centurion and those with him who were keeping watch over Jesus saw the earthquake and what had took place, they were terrified and said, "Truly, this man was God's Son." I've called this episode "The Triumph of the Crucified." It's taken from the title of a book by the late Eric Sauer, a book that I had on my shelf and is among the many I haven't actually read. Yet the title itself is one that is appropriate for today. I'm not sure what Professor Sauer would make of what I'm about to do with this title, and I can't really ask him. Yet the triumph of the crucified points to the emphasis in Matthew's Gospel in this passage that we've just read. So let's look at it. Matthew is very clear that it's at the moment of Jesus' death that the curtain of the temple is torn in two, from top to bottom. This is a very heavy curtain that separates the holy place from the Holy of Holies. It only gets passed by once a year by the high priest in great fear and trepidation on the Day of Atonement, when he goes in to make an offering to God for the people. I understand that he would go in trailing a rope tied to one of his ankles in case he died while he was in there. This was so that he could then be dragged out. No one could go in to fetch him. So this curtain, this barrier of separation between God and the people, was torn in two at the exact moment of Jesus' death. And it was torn from top to bottom. One article I read suggested that it was around 18 metres, 60 feet high, and 100 millimetres, that's 4 inches thick. Apparently, Josephus has suggested that horses tied to each side could not have torn it apart. And yet at this exact moment it tears from top to bottom, indicating that this was an action beyond human agency. Of course, theologically, this indicates that the way to God is now open to all. It is important to note that this happens at the point of Jesus' death, not his resurrection. This didn't happen on that glorious resurrection morning. This happens at the point of his death. It's the death of Jesus that secures entry. Matthew is telling us that even if he had not risen from the dead, which he did, our salvation, our access to God is already secured. Next we read of the earthquake, with rocks splitting and tombs being opened and dead saints coming to life at this exact same moment. Matthew is the only writer who reports this. It may seem fanciful, yet it makes sense then of the words of the centurion and those watching over Jesus, which are reported in the other Gospels, when they say, "Surely this was the Son of God." Jesus gives up his own life. This is remarkable in itself. It says he breathed his last. He gave up his spirit. Human beings don't normally have the capacity to do that. And at the same time as he does that, an earthquake occurs, and those that are there at the moment make a connection between these two events. While it's recorded here that the dead were brought back to life, And since sin and death were conquered at this moment, how could it not be so? It's only after the resurrection of Christ that reports start coming in of people encountering those that they previously knew to be dead. The whole point of Matthew's narrative is to point to the central redemptive importance of this moment, a moment of victory, not of defeat. It's here that the destiny of humankind, of the whole of creation, is settled. Mel Gibson's movie, The Passion of the Christ, gets it right in this respect. It's at the moment of Jesus' death, the moment that Satan was anticipating as his moment of victory, that he is shocked into the realization that this is the moment of his defeat, that he has lost. It is the crucified that has triumphed. It takes us a bit to get our heads and hearts around. Certainly the disciples did not get it. They were devastated, grief-stricken by Jesus' death, and the events accompanying it would have struck fear into the hearts of people. It would have only been on later reflection that they would have realized that there was something terribly wonderful that was going on here. You can look at the terrible events and think how awful it is, and then later reflecting and realizing, yeah, but there was something truly, wonderfully, life-givingly, amazingly beautiful that was happening in the middle of all of this. I wonder how many thought, as they look back, yeah, I did experience an illogical brief moment of joy that I could not explain and felt deeply embarrassed and ashamed of. I've never spoken of it to anyone. It quickly passed as the reality of the finality of Jesus' death struck home, and I was left with deep grief. I wonder. I don't know. It's important, though, to understand that it was here, at this moment, that we have assurance of forgiveness of sins, of knowing that we are accepted and loved by God. The resurrection to follow is simply a confirmation of something that God has already done. It's the icing on the cake. It's the proof that what has been accomplished has been accomplished. It's here at this moment of death that our sin is shown to be dealt with. Buried with Christ in his death, no more to trouble us. It's been attended to once and for all, and we are set free. Hallelujah. God bless you.